An estimated 33,000 Idahoans rely on direct care workers for daily assistance on tasks like bathing, transportation, and household chores. Direct care workers help older adults and people with disabilities live independently and play a critical role in keeping more Idahoans out of assisted living facilities. But there's an acute shortage of people in those jobs. Earlier this year, the Office of Performance Evaluations released a report on the state's direct care worker shortage, estimating the state needs to fill at least 3,000 more direct care jobs. This summer, producer Ruth Brown spent time with some Idahoans who rely on the direct care workforce for their daily needs.
I want to fill your water too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Direct care workers make it possible for Shiloh Blackburn to live independently in her Pocatello apartment. Blackburn has cerebral palsy and relies on those workers for daily help. Those workers are in short supply across Idaho.
They help me get up out of bed and into my chair. And let me clarify that one part. Once I'm in bed, I can't get out of bed on my own. Once I'm in my chair, I cannot get out of my chair on my own. I have to have help. So if somebody does not come in for a shift, I'm stuck. Because like I said, I can't get out of bed or out of my chair, so I can't take myself to the bathroom. I can't cook. I can't get my medication or vitamins and whatnot. It's really been stressful the last couple of years trying to find people that are reliable and accountable and trustworthy.
Shiloh has Medicaid and Medicare and is under self-directed care. Self-direction means a Medicaid participant has decision-making authority over their care, and it's a person-centered care process based on their needs.
Up until this year, I've only been able to pay people $11 an hour, and even then, I had to go through several hoops to get a larger budget on self-direction. And my budget controls how much I can pay my caregivers and how many hours I get during the day.
The number of hours of service she gets during the day can impact many things she needs them for, such as food preparation, hygiene support, medication, and companionship. The alternative would be to rely on her parents, whom Shiloh knows are aging, or she would be forced to live in a group home. She also argues that in the long run, a group home or a nursing home would be more expensive to the state.
One of the things that concerns me most is that caregivers are not paid as much as other fields of work. Right now, my caregivers, they don't have benefits. They don't get paid time off. They don't get holiday pay because that's not in my budget. That's not something my caregivers and other caregivers have, you know. They really are hardworking and they really care about me and they want to make sure I get the care I need. But at the same time, they have their own lives to live and they have their own needs.
Look, where are you? You're in here somewhere.
For Rochelle Larson of Rigby, direct care workers help her family better take care of and manage the life of 2 children with disabilities.
With me.
Was that the governor?
So we have 2 children with special needs. We have a son, Abraham, who is 14, almost 15, and then our daughter, Brinley, who is 10. She has Down syndrome.
Abraham uses a habilitation interventionalist, which is hired through an agency. The family gets about 10 hours a week for services. Both children use Medicaid's family-directed support service to hire workers. That system isn't always perfect.
In the last couple years, we've seen an increase in turnover in workers with Abraham for sure, and agencies not like being on a wait list to be able to even get services as well. So we felt very fortunate when we were able to actually receive services. And then just in this past year, he has had 4 different people work with him, and he's had about 4 months without anybody being available to work. schedules are very important, and routines, and finding someone that works well with your child and they have a relationship and they start making progress on goals that they're working on, and then the worker leaves for another job, and then we have a transition and we're starting all over again. And so it feels like we make a little bit of progress and then a worker changes or leaves, and then feels like we're starting at square one again. So it just gets frustrating as a parent to see your child make some progress and then regress, and then feels like that cycle just goes over and over and over again.
Brindley uses a direct care worker to help her focus on goals and offer her parents respite.
We hire the individuals that come in, and we work with them to get to know her and to train them on the goals that we're working on and the expectations that we have for her and for the workers. We've found that in our area there's a lot of college kids, and so there are people that are looking for jobs, but we can't pay what other businesses are paying, and so it's really difficult to be able to keep workers at a steady rate. Most of ours have another job, and so their hours are very limited to be able to work with our children. We try to bring them into our family and make them part of our family, hopefully to get them to stay and work longer, because we see with her as well, she's very routine oriented.
The Larson family tries to supplement their budget when they can, but Rochelle knows they can make more at other jobs.
We've taken some on vacation with us, and then we have them work for a few hours, but then the rest they're just on vacation with us. And we try and we supplement when we can as well with our own finances, and just kind of make it worthwhile, hopefully, for them to want to stay, because we know it is an exhausting job, but it is also very rewarding when you see your children progress and the people that they're working with, when you see them meet a goal, it is very rewarding. And so for us, I think we just really try to make them be part of our family so they never want to leave us.
Rochelle's seen the benefits of having a good care worker and stressed that the value of that is something that needs to be reflected in their wages.
I feel like that's a big reason why we have such a shortage, and because it is an exhausting job. It's hard to work with individuals with disabilities because it's either physically hard, with our son Abraham, it's mentally and physically draining. And so to be compensated for that work would be amazing, because we value that so much. I know our family couldn't do a lot of the things that we do, typical things that families take for granted, if we didn't have that extra support and care in our home. I feel like sometimes maybe government and even outside, just people in general feel like they're just glorified babysitters or someone there to help watch your kid, when they're doing a lot more. They are working on goals and outcomes and trying to help our children be able to contribute to society.
That same report had recommendations for how to address the worker shortage. More pay. The state sets Medicaid payment rates, and direct care providers rely on those rates to pay their workers and provide services. On Thursday, the Our Care Can't Wait Coalition held a legislative luncheon to address what the legislature could do to help.
The most direct thing that Idaho could do to support a sustainable direct care workforce is to address the Medicaid rates. So Ryan walked through the 4 different components that go into the Medicaid rates. We're going to focus for a moment on specifically the decision points that are in the target hourly wages. The first thing that we recommended was that to take a look at how we are setting what that target hourly wage is. Right now, most of the Medicaid services sort of have one occupational benchmark that they compare to. Maybe that is a home health aide, maybe that's a personal care assistant as reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That decision gets made during the cost survey process. I think our suggestion was that we look at what those benchmarks are and maybe consider using a group of occupations instead of a single one. One issue that would address is the Bureau of Labor Statistics or the weighted average hourly report, neither one of those have occupations that perfectly match direct care. And so we're using a proxy of some kind. If we grouped a couple together, that might provide some more stability and a better representation of what's going on. Another reason is sometimes the Bureau of Labor Statistics does a big reorganization and then you lose your occupational target. Another reason is there's a direct care service array that was associated with, I think they were called exercise professional athletic or personal trainers. At the time, it made sense to associate them with personal trainers. But then when COVID hit, a lot of people quit using personal trainers, but they did not quit using their direct care worker. So the BLS hourly average wage went way down for personal trainers, but did not for direct care workers. And so using a composite might give you a better picture of what's happening inside direct care. Another idea that we had was maybe looking for one of those occupations with comparable knowledge, skills, and abilities outside of direct care. Maybe a hospitality occupation. We didn't feel that we had enough to specifically suggest the code, but if you use something outside that is a direct competitor of direct care, that might help also give you a better picture of what the market wage would be. This might be the most important one out of all of our recommendations, and that's to adjust rates more frequently. A lot of Medicaid services have a Medicare comparable service. A lot of Medicaid services automatically adjust when Medicare adjusts. Direct care does not have Medicare equivalents. So unless the department comes and asks the legislature, then there's not a budget request to tell you what's happening for these services. It was our recommendation that the department use the information they would have about changes in wages for direct care workers, calculate what the adjustment would need to be to stay on par, and to bring that request to the legislature every year, knowing that the legislature has lots of priorities, and then you have appropriation authority, you could adjust that however. But you would have the information to start with to then decide what needs to happen with those rates. And you would also know kind of more globally, I think now a challenge is you get a very large request once every 5 years, and you hear lots of concerns about destabilization in the workforce and the challenges providers are facing, the challenges people who receive services are facing. And it feels like every year you're addressing a very large issue, but we're never quite catching up. So our suggestion would be that every single year you get information about how these rates could be adjusted. The last recommendation we had was to consider a region-specific adjustment. Our state's very large geographically, and there's different forces throughout the state that affect the workforce differently. So that was a consideration we gave to the department to think about what that would look like and then present that information.
By the way, the legislature's Medicaid Managed Care Task Force is circulating a draft of its final report after meeting for the last time on Tuesday. That report has no recommendations to directly address the direct care workforce shortage. To see a draft of that report and learn more, see Ruth's online reporting. You can find those links at idahoreports.org.